Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Wise Decision Maker Show, where we help you make the wisest and most profitable decisions. My name, as always, is Dr. Gleb Tsipursky. I'm the CEO of Disaster Avoidance Experts, the future of work consultancy that sponsors the Wise Decision Maker Show. And today with me is Chris Federspiel, who's the founder and CEO of Blackthorn. And we'll talk about Blackthorn a little later, what it is. But first, Chris, tell me just how does it feel to run an all-remote company? You run an all-remote company. That's different, definitely, than traditional companies that come about and decide to switch to remote. So how did you decide to go remote all in from the early days of founding your company?
Yeah, when I started this with two other guys who are no longer
Mhm.
here, but they were global to begin with, but also
Mm.
I started with I was around 33, 34. I'm
Mhm.
41 now. And before that I was commuting to every job ever. And I
Mhm.
hated commuting. I just hated it.
Mm.
The internet
Yeah,
always like kind of sucked. It was very slow and you couldn't really like do audio stuff and video stuff like this very well. But
sure.
once Zoom started to get bigger, we just figured why don't we just hire people from wherever? Because then
Mm.
like the cost of living in uh, a lot of countries is not as high as it is particularly in New York or even the
Mhm.
US for that matter. But everyone's just as talented. So we figured,
Mhm.
if we combine Zoom with people that live in other countries, we can get just as good talent and keep working fine. And when you couple that with systems like GitHub or Jira and these other like
Mhm.
Slack, basically everything has a channel. It's
Mhm.
never been an issue. So we've been remote now since we started like 7 years ago, and
Mm.
there's never been a problem. I think we're in like 23 or 24 US states now and 15
Mhm.
countries or something like this, and it's always been fine.
Mm. So tell me a little bit more about those systems and processes that you use to make remote work well.
Yeah, there's no ability to walk up to a coworker next to you, or no one's just like
Mhm.
constantly next to you. So it helps to be able to communicate asynchronously. So anything
Mhm.
that we do, we try to have maybe more documentation than usual. So we'll put more notes into a
Mhm.
ticket we're working on, or there'll be more support case notes. Or if we're doing something with sales pipeline, there'll be a lot more
Mhm.
call notes in there. We have scheduled meetings that happen for every department, either daily or weekly, just to keep the meeting
Mhm.
cadence. And that just it's not really so different than if you're in person, but it's just a
Yeah.
heavier emphasis on having things be written, which is
Mhm.
not the worst thing. But it also helps
Mhm.
because English is not the first language of
Mhm.
like a third of our company. So for
Mhm.
a lot of people, it's much easier to read English rather than like digest it
Mhm.
like auditorily or orally from a call. So it helps. And then we have some people in the team that use like translation tools. Like even Zoom now has the closed captioning to do
Yeah.
the mostly real time translation of how that's working.
Mhm.
And having consistent meetings, having a lot more documentation across Slack, GitHub, Jira, Salesforce. We use that everywhere. It just helps us to be able to dig up records and have it all documented. It's no like mystery. It just takes a bit more
Mhm.
time and more scheduled meetings. But on the flip side, you have more time because you're not commuting
Yeah.
15 minutes to an hour and a half, twice, two times a day. And you also save a lot of money because there isn't a car and expense or paying for mass transit or whatever. So
Mhm.
it, everyone loves it. But the thing is, it's not for everyone. We've had some people join the company that they actually left because they said, I really miss being in person, and they went to a
Mhm.
company in person.
Makes
Because it
sense.
is a bit different. Like it's not like
Sure.
you sit next to someone. So we have a few people on the team who live in relatively the same place, and they'll have like a two or
Mhm.
three person co-working space.
Oh,
So
cool.
we have a few of those, but mostly everybody's just at home. It's mostly a lot
Mhm.
of people who like me, they just like being alone for most of the day, I guess. But some
Mhm.
people go to coffee shops or they go
Mhm.
outside or something like this.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, Blackthorn is a very innovative tool. It's an app, and we'll talk about what that is. But tell me a little bit more about how you innovate working remotely, because that's one of the biggest concerns of business leaders. I helped 21 companies transition to hybrid work, remote work, figure this thing out. And the large majority of them had a lot of concerns about innovation, because their future success, long-term, at least as a company, depends on innovation. And there's a lot of anxiety among leaders about being able to innovate in remote settings. They feel that they'll lose that spontaneous hallway conversation of those brainstorming sessions. Tell me a little bit more about how you innovate in remote settings.
Yeah, there's a number of us that have gotten together in person quite a few times over the years, and it brings an energy to it, but not necessarily different or better ideas. So it's nice to be in person. It builds some kind of camaraderie. There's some palpable energy in the air. But the bulk of what we're doing, it comes from all the normal channels that everybody has. We have a product team. Our customers more or less tell us where to take the products. So we'll release some functionality that does some baseline, and the customer will say, I want this changed. I want this added onto it. This thing isn't important. I want to do this thing. So we'll have surveys, we'll have interviews, but mostly we'll just get interest from sales and support channels by people telling us what they want. Then the innovative concept becomes more of the technical architecture side about how we actually want to go about it. And if you get enough smart people on a Zoom, or you get people that have the meeting and then they have time to digest it, and then people build little MVPs to try stuff, or we get all these GitHub comments or Jira comments, it also starts to accrue. I mean, I don't think we've ever had a lack of ideas. Now, granted, we're not Apple or Tesla and coming out with the most innovative things you've ever seen, right? So I'm not saying that we're far ahead of the curve here. So I've never worked in one of these pure tech focused in-person firms, so I can't speak to whether it would be more advantageous, but I can certainly say we're doing a lot of things at the company using approaches that I don't know other companies that are using. Like, I don't know other companies using our same deployment pipelines or our same tech stacks to solve the same kind of issues. So I know there's been a good number of innovative concepts that have come out of the way we've been doing this. And if there was like a 3 or 4 year period where we never met in person. And then we eventually met in person. It was like kind of awesome. And then we've been doing this once a year now, every year, just to kind of build the team, but it hasn't really spawned ideas. It's been more for like the energy.
Team build. Okay. Now, for those folks who don't know about Blackthorn, give us a little bit more of the context of what you do, so to inform the rest of the conversation.
Sure. So the Salesforce.com platform is a big global database. It's for businesses and organizations like private and nonprofit to store their company's data. It starts with their accounts and contacts. It helps to measure sales pipeline. You can do customer support on it. But then once customers are live with it, a business has a lot of things that they need to do. In our case, businesses need to run events. They might be using Cvent or Eventbrite. They need to collect payments. There's any number of payment gateways or ways to charge people by credit card to do that. They might have to send an SMS to their customers. But the problem with getting to be a bigger and bigger company is that you end up with all these systems. They have to be integrated. If they are, sometimes they aren't. So your concept of a customer ends up in 6, 7, 8, 9 systems, and they each have piecemeal different information. You don't have a single view of the customer. So we took some of the concepts that we knew weren't really being addressed on Salesforce or weren't being addressed in a way that made it very easy, and focused just on those. So we initially launched our payments app. So you can process a payment from within Salesforce, either over the phone, or you send someone a link, or we have a mobile card reader. And then our events app, if you've used Cvent or Eventbrite or any app that allows you to create an event, it has a ticket and so forth, you can make that in Salesforce, and that then launches your event. So it gives companies customers ways to run their process from within the same system without having to get more.
Okay, excellent. That's good context. Now, when you're you have to come up with a lot of innovative ideas, of course, to make that work. So talking about innovation. Now, when we're talking about innovation, another aspect of things that a lot of my clients tell me they're worried about is how to deal with psychologically charged conversations, conflicts, tensions in remote settings. They are worried about that. How do you handle those types of conversations?
Yeah, I am as much to blame as anyone else that's had any kind of issues. I
Mhm.
got diagnosed bipolar 2 when I was like
Mm,
20, 21 years old or something like that. So a lot of days I end up being pretty short with people. It happened much
mm,
more when we were earlier company and had a lot of problems. The thing that's tended to happen is when it has a conflict over a keyboard rather than on a video call. People
mm,
tend to be either unfiltered or a bit more aggressive or harsh when it's over a Slack chat or an
mm,
email or an SMS or a comment left in a dev environment. And once there's any kind of issue, the best way we've seen to get it resolved is
mhm,
it depends on the people. You either ask the two people, it's generally between one and another person. You ask the two people to get on a Zoom and just talk, or if it's like
mm,
quite bad, you can have the two of them with a mediator. Like that was, it took us many years before we had someone in a human resources or people operations type of capacity, which we do now. It's great. But before then, like I would be on a call and we would just talk through it with the other
mm,
people. But sometimes well, there were 2 or 3 occasions where we hired some people that kind of went bananas, and they would have these like long running stream slacks, and they were like ripping on other people, and we're
mm,
like, hey, I'm sorry, but there's no place for this in the work environment. You got to go. Like
mm,
some things you can work on with a behavioral plan and just say,
mhm.
they're forgivable. You say, hey, this wasn't good, but you can't do it again. This is like a strike, but if we see it again, like we're gonna have to do something. Then there's other things that you just can't forgive those types of
Yeah.
things in the workplace. So on rare occasions we've let people go, but I think in 7 years it was only like 2 or 3 times
Okay.
across like some things happening. But generally, when we've gotten people onto a video Zoom, the key word is video. There's something about,
Mhm.
I mean, it's even better in person, but we
Sure.
can't. But if you can see the person, it just,
Mhm.
I don't know, seeing someone's expressions tends to take the edge off a bit. That's
Yeah.
that's actually worked the best. And in some
Mm,
cases, this is not any different from being in person versus being remote. We've just swapped people on teams because sometimes it's been between
mm.
um, someone on a team and the manager, but
Okay.
they're both great. It was just like when two dogs meet each other in the dog park and they
Mhm.
instantly hate each other. It's something like this.
Yeah.
So we've like swapped teams, and that's worked pretty well too.
Mhm. And like one thing I'm curious about in terms of conflicts, tensions is you have people working from around the globe. So
Mhm.
how do you mediate conflicts and tensions between different cultural approaches?
We haven't had many actually.
Okay.
Um, Maybe we've been fortunate
Okay.
in that sense, but we really haven't had many. Like if anything racial ever came up, we'd probably, which I don't know if we have yet, or
Mhm.
I hope we never do, but we'd probably just fire them on the spot. Like
Mhm.
you just I don't want that in my life. Like the concept we try to focus on is working with people that you enjoy. Like you have
Mhm.
like like I tell the team no one is like resuscitating hearts by hand here. Like,
Mhm.
we're
Right.
we're making software for businesses, right? This isn't like a
Mhm.
life critical function. So we should enjoy
Yeah.
the people we're working with. We have
Mm.
that luxury. And if for some reason someone's not interacting that way, like they don't have a place here. So if there
Mm.
was something with people working in different countries, like all global companies have this same thing, right? They're remote
Sure.
because they have offices in different places. So it's not really different in that regard. But I think if anything
Mm.
did start to happen, we would come down on it pretty
Mm.
swiftly and severely.
Well, different. So I have a number of clients who are global companies and have teams like that. But what happens is that they have offices globally. So
Got it.
they're not fully remote. They have an office, and there's a few people working in India, and a few people working in Nigeria or something like that. So there's an office there. So I think that's kind of a difference. Yeah, I noticed something. My clients tend to be careful when they have, let's say, when they have Indians on their team. They might be reluctant to hire people from Pakistan to be on their team. So kind of those sorts of issues that they might watch out for.
Yeah, I guess maybe it depends on the type of work. Like like if you're working on in dev environments and you're writing code and doing commits, maybe it's different than if you're trying to facilitate like some type of roles benefit a lot from constructive debate. Something like that might get more heated. So maybe it depends upon the type of roles where you would put people together with. But yeah, we haven't seen much of that. We've seen a little bit, but like underpinnings, but nothing's really come out kind of big, and we've kind of nipped it in the bud before anything really got anywhere.
Okay, good. Now, as we're finishing up the conversation, is there anything else you haven't shared yet about remote work, about Blackthorn, that you want to share as before we wrap up?
Yeah, I think remote work, I think led us into doing a 4-day work week, which we started like 8 or 9 months ago, because they're very similar. The concept for us is get your work done and then you're good. Because when you're remote, you don't really know when someone's working, but you can see the output and you can't fake output. So it's different. If you're in person, you get there before the boss does and you leave after the boss leaves. But if you're remote, like it doesn't exist. So it kills a lot of the dumb politics and it puts the focus on the output. So, that's a change we've had to make, but it relies on the data. So if the team isn't inputting the data in whatever system that their role or department is using, then it's very hard to measure. That's been a big benefit of the data entry that we have. It takes a bit more time, but it helps keep things more objective.
Yeah, data entry, that's very valuable. Something that I always do with my clients when we transition to hybrid work, remote work, figuring out how to keep people accountable. So a good technique that we've developed is to have weekly meetings where you have some performance evaluation each week. So there's nice cadence at the one-on-ones with the manager. So seeing how you're doing in your performance, how you did last week, what your plans are for next week, and so on. So that's a very good technique as well.
Nice.
All right.
Cool.
Well, thank you for participating. Really appreciate it.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on.
All right. And thank you to the audience for checking out another episode of the Wise Decision Maker Show. I hope you subscribe to the show wherever you check this out and leave a review. We love to hear what you think, and it helps other people discover the show. I look forward to seeing you in the next episode of the Wise Decision Maker Show. In the meantime, the wisest and most profitable decisions to you, my friends.